George has entered the waiting room.
Make sure you mute us.
I'm going to shut this door.
Good morning, everyone. We're setting up and getting our second camera logged in. This will be a training this morning.
Did you get in now?
Okay. The induction and the SKS dishwasher. Give us just a minute to finish getting up. What we ask is everybody stay muted. And if you have a question, just type it in, and I can, when John gets to a spot, I can ask him to answer the question, and then we'll keep going at the very end of the presentation. What we'll do is we'll ask everybody to go ahead and unmute and turn it into kind of an open forum. That way we can keep the class rolling. One other thing I ask is if you would, down in the chat box, if you would be so kind, if you have multiple people watching with you,
Turn it this way.
you could please,
Oh, wherever you want to. So let me.
Dan plus one. That way we can get
Okay.
our count straight. Because right now, all it does is count
Okay.
whoever logged in, and that way we can get a head count for the rest of the group. All right. Now, the other thing to assist you with the class, there are two cameras that we are using. One of them says LG training. The other one says video box. If you're looking at video box, you just saw John get a sip of coffee. If you will go up and hover in the upper right-hand corner of a picture, click those three little buttons and hit where it says pin video. If you do that, that will become your main screen and it'll go large. If not, you're going to be watching this whole training session in a 1.5 by 1/2 inch box. So just hover over the picture. Now, if we change views, just do the same thing. Unpin and then pin the LG training camera. Unfortunately, Zoom doesn't allow me to change which view is best for what's being shown. Usually we start off, since we have a cameraman, we'll probably stay most of the time with the one that says video box. But if you see something happen in the other camera, you can always unpin and go to that camera. But just remember, you've got to pin it to get the full screen. All right, at this time, I have nobody else asking permission to come in, so I'm going to assume the class is ready to go. I'm going to turn this over to John Stanton.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the LG Training Center. We're in Lab 2 down here in Huntsville, Alabama. And for most of you, it's morning. Some of you it might be afternoon. So welcome. I'm glad you can make it today. Today, we've got a couple products to cover. We've got the SKS Signature Cooktop here. This is an induction cooktop. And we also have one of our newest products, just finished the training presentation on it. It's the SKS Dishwasher. And I'm excited about both products. They're excellent products. So with that said, let's go ahead and we'll get started. So here's an overview of this. I'm sorry I don't have it in a setting that you would normally see, but I thought this would be a little bit easier. And to speed things up a little bit, I removed a lot of the screws so we don't have to spend a lot of time taking things apart. So first of all, let's talk a couple little things about installation. I looked at the installation manual. I didn't see anything pressing that you had to do differently. Just look at your minimum clearances. And what's really important is the cabinet opening that you're going to drop this down into. Sometimes what we see is sometimes the installers try to take shortcuts and they try to slam this into an existing opening. They get it in there, but they don't account for wood swelling. So later on, when the wood swells up, maybe in the warm, humid summer months, what'll happen is you put pressure around this and we get stress fractures. This cracks all the way down. So if you're cutting out that opening that we advise you to do in the installation guide, you won't have any issue. All right, so let's talk about how this works. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see that a little better. I'm kind of limited here because I got a power cord sticking in there, so I'm trying to line this up. Now, one of the things I want to mention is I found this trick out years ago, and I didn't completely finish this, but a couple boards like this, you can use 2x4s, and you make these slightly larger so that this is the width of the cabinet. Now, to protect the customer's investment countertops and stuff so you don't scratch it, what you can do is you can go to a place that sells rug remnants, and you can get some pieces of that and you can wrap it around here and then tack it together. And how this is helpful is when you lift up that cooktop out of its location, how do you get to the screws and everything is kind of awkward. So the idea behind this is once you pull off one side, you'll have two of these and you can slide this underneath. And then what will happen is the cooktop will be supported and the other ends of these, and you got that protective carpeting on there. So one would go here and one would go on the other side, and it just makes it easier to get to the screws and service that. So that's a little tip I learned years ago just to make working on cooktops a little bit easier. This is a capacitive touch, okay? We got a 7-inch LCD screen on there, and let's go ahead and we'll power this up. Okay, power this up. What you're going to do is a long press on the power button. Usually takes about 3 or 4 seconds, and my display will come up. Now, one of the accessories we used to give consumers when they bought induction cooktops was a magnet. So they would use the magnet to determine whether or not the cookware was suitable to work on an induction range. We don't have to do that anymore because this one has auto sensing. So basically, if you put the wrong pan on there, you'll get a warning on here telling them that that pan that they're using is not suitable for that. So let's go through some of these features. This one over here is a little button that we can depress, and that's basically for cleaning. What it'll do is it'll time. It says you have within 1 second to cancel it. Otherwise, it's going to lock that screen out. And then you can go ahead and you can polish it or clean it up without having to worry about activating anything. All right. Then we've got a settings menu over here. And we've got things like lockout. So lockout is if you want to lock out the induction cooktop so nobody can tamper with it, kids or pets or whatever, you can go ahead and you can choose that feature. We can go ahead and we can change the time of day. We can go 12-hour clock, 24-hour clock, AM, PM. Then there's our Wi-Fi. That's how we turn on our Wi-Fi if we want to hook it up to our home network. We have brightness levels. Brightness levels has 5 different levels, and we can change the brightness. And just confirm it. I'm going to go to the highest so we can see that. And then we have power levels. I got it set for 17. Now, what that does for you is you have a choice, 9 or 17 power levels. You can go the lowest power level, which is 9. So you go 0 all the way up to 9 plus boost. But if you go to 17, it's kind of an increment. So it's more precise cooking. So the owner of this cooktop has that feature where they can go ahead and either go 9 or 17, depending on what they want to use it for. Okay. Next one is your language. You got 3 languages on there: English, Spanish, and French. And then let's go ahead and scroll to the other screen. I can change the volume. I can go mute, low, or high. Then I've got demo mode. If you're a store owner and you want to use this in the demo mode in your store, it'll allow the consumers to go ahead and play with the buttons, but these induction burners or the work coils on here will not heat up. So it's strictly a kind of interactive thing for on the sales floor. The other one is factory data reset if you want to set it back to the original settings on there. And the last one is just a open source licensing. You can open that up and you can scroll through there. You can read the little fine points of that. Okay. All right, so let's get out of that and let's show you how this works. So what you're going to do is choose any burners. Now these burners over here, these are flexible. So you don't necessarily have to have it positioned right there. It can go over a little bit. That can pick it up. It has auto sense. It'll sense if the pot's here. This one is your big burner here. It's a dual burner. And basically, if you have a pot here that's 9 inches or less, they're going to use the inner coil. Anything bigger than 9 inches, they'll use the whole coil here. So you get the biggest effect on that. So that's if you're maybe boiling pasta or something like that in that big old stock pot, and you want to boil it up real quick, you would just choose that one. It's usually a bigger pot on there. You can go to boost and it'll heat it up real quick for you. And then we also have flex zones here. So we got workstations. Here's one workstation. And even though these are separate, these kind of share. And I'll talk a little bit about that power sharing when we get into a little more detailed. So let's go show you how to turn these on first. And I've got kind of a ratty looking pot over here, and this is an aluminum pot. And I'm going to show you what will happen if a customer tries to use a wrong pot on there. So let's go ahead and we'll turn that on, and I'm going to go all the way up to 9, and I'm going to put this on here. And then we should get a notification slightly that says, please confirm whether or not the appliance that you're using is cooking correctly. Now, one of the things is you might get customers that question about the cookware. Why does some cookware seem to cook a little bit better? It all has to do with maybe one of the first things you should be checking is your incoming power supply. That can affect your cooking wattage. So you want to verify that you got the correct voltage coming to that. If not, that's something an electrician can take care of. But a lot of times it has to do with the cookware we're using. Some of the has better contact with the surface on here. Some of these might be slightly convex. And we need a good surface contact on here in order to work better. And you might even see a variance between using this burner and that burner. But what we have on here is a way for the consumer to check this for themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and put this big one on here. All right, and show you how to get into it. This morning it was a little bit tricky. Maybe I got a little more moisture in my hand because this morning I was having a little bit of trouble getting into this. Now, when you do this test, this is called an output test, an output index test, and it tells you the efficiency of the pan that you're using. And it's based on a 100% scale. So the closer you are to 100%, that shows you that you've got a pan that is going to do 100% of the induction cooking that you're putting into this thing is used or utilized at 100%. So let's go turn this back on again. Now, do not have a pot on. You can only have one pot. So in this case, I'm going to use that center burner. So what we're going to do is turn this on. Okay, I'm going to go to power level 9. And then right here, I'm going to do a long press on 9 here. And it should flash with the percentage of what this cookware is detecting. So this morning, it took me a little while. It took maybe about 12 seconds or so. If it doesn't work, I'll cancel it again and try it. But usually when I press this, it flashes right away. So there it goes. So this one's at 100%. So you can tell the customer that that pan is the most efficient pan you can put on there. And you might get 40%, 50%, 60%, whatever, but it's kind of a good way of detecting the efficiency of the cookware that you're using, okay? And when you go back to your settings here, you can also choose simmer or you can go to boost. Now, these things have power share. So these two share the same power. This one is separate. All right. So if you're going to use boost on this one, you won't be able to use boost on the other two. It just won't allow you to do that. If you wanted 2 of your cookwares for boost, let me go ahead and I can add this one. It would have to be on this coil right here. So we'll turn this one on. And then we'll go to boost on this one too. So, all right. And as you can see, they're starting to boil pretty quickly. Now, I won't be able to use boost on this one because I already chose it for that one. There's only a certain amount of power consumption that I can use on these things, so it's not going to allow me to do that. Also, when you're using these different work zones, remember, they're going to be sharing a limited amount of power between them. So sometimes you might be selecting a higher setting on one and you want to do the same thing on the other. There isn't enough to go around, so they'll kind of balance it out. It might drop one of them down to the next level. So you can see it's already boiling. Doesn't take very long on there. Canceling is real simple. Just go ahead and cancel these burners. And I'm going to move these on the side. They're a little bit warm on here. Now, before I take this off, let me show you something here. You got a little red LED light here. This indicates that that burner is on. It didn't stay on because I didn't select anything. But you can see how that red LED is flashing or staying on in this case. Also, when you remove the pan, if that surface area is hot, that'll stay on until that cool. So that also doubles as your hot indicator light. All right. Before I move on, is there any questions about operation? And I'm going to show you guys how to get into the test mode.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you saying that you cannot cook on full power on more than 2 burners at one time?
You know, sometimes like if you're using these two, you definitely can't go on both boost on both of them, but you can try 9 and 9. And so what'll happen is if you're consuming too much power, what it's going to do is kind of try to balance that load out. So it might drop one of those down to the next level. Okay. Even though the control panel will say 9 on there, it's actually adjusting itself automatically.
Is that going to be explained to the customer when they purchase the unit? Because we have customers that wants to cook on more than one burner on full power at one time.
Yeah, don't forget, you know, eventually one of those pots maybe is going to reach temperature and they can control that, or they can load that down. I'm not saying in all cases you're not going to be able to go to full power on there, but there are times when you're using those burners, there's not enough wattage to go around for both of them. So it would do an automatic adjust on them. And most customers don't even really notice the difference unless you've got that expert that knows exactly how long certain things take. They might say it's taking maybe another 10 seconds longer or something like that. So it is explained in the owner's manual how power sharing works. But periodically we get questions on that. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, let's show you how to get into the service mode. You're going to power it up. Once you get along, press on the power button. Okay, let me see if I can get 2 hands in here. So what you're going to do from the top of this, you're going to scroll all the way down, and then you hold the clock button. Usually takes a few seconds. Let me try that again. My fingers are dry this morning. It really doesn't like me. So let me wet them a little bit. Maybe I can get some moisture on there. That's what happens when you get old. All right, let's power this up again. All right, slide this all the way down and hit your clock button. Okay, oops. There you go. All right, so this is your normal operation. It gives you things like inverter checksums. It gives you the inverter, the 3 different inverters on there, your display version, your device codes, and so forth. These are designed for you. These are kind of engineering things. I'll go through them a little bit, but I think these were mainly, these little settings down here were designed for the factory to set this up. But one of the things you can do is a touch test. So if you touch this thing right here, notice all the little squares are in red. So it gives you you can make sure that all the little segments are working. So as you touch them, they're going to turn green. Okay. And when you're done with it, it'll just go back to the screen. Okay. Now the other one is, this is a 7-inch LCD screen, and it has 4 colors, excuse me. So it starts out with red. You just touch it and it's going to turn to green. Touch it again, it's going to turn to blue. And one more time, it goes to white. Okay. And then it just cancels it out. So Let me get back into that again, and we'll show you some of the other things. And this right over here is, once again, a factory reset. You can set it back to the original settings. Okay, so if you go to this one is normal information. Okay, that's what's displayed right now. This one will show you the runtime on the burners. Okay, to go back, just hit the clear button. This one is your inverter voltage adjust. And basically, that's all it comes up in. So it's probably something a factory is using. This one over here is also for the 4 little burners. I think you need something on there. There's a kind of a load test that they use. I'll get more information later, but I really don't think any of this was designed for us as service technicians. I think they were mainly wanting us to use these up here. But if you're going to play with this, the only one I don't want you to really to play with is this one right here, this life button. Life test is basically at the factory. They'll set this up and they'll let it run for hours and hours and hours. I put it in the life test and there's no way of canceling it. It just sat there for hours. The only way it can get out of it is I have to actually unplug the unit, let it reset, and then plug it back in again. It was fine. So don't do that one unless you're prepared to unplug that or hit the circuit breaker if you're in a customer's house. Okay, so let's go back. We'll clear this and we're back to the actual home screen again. Okay. All right, before we move on, any questions on operation? It's very, very simple to use, very user-friendly. Nope. Okay, I'm going to unplug this thing and let's show you how to service it. Were you able to use PowerPoint, or is that not an option? Okay, we're going to try doing 2 things. I put some of these slides on a PowerPoint. It might be easier to show you where they're at, but if it doesn't work, we'll just do live things on it. Let's show you how to service this thing now. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this thing. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to remove the cooktop from its location. Like I said, if you have those little boards there that are protected, you can go ahead and support it. I have removed all the screws. There's a series of screws around here. I think there's about 16 screws I had to remove. And one thing that you don't want to do is take this cooktop and just rip it straight up. You know, on some of the earlier ones, if you worked on some of our early induction cooktops, basically we use those little finger sensors under there. They would touch the capacitive glass here, and you were able to remove the glass, and theoretically you can plug it in and you can use your fingers to make contact. This is a little bit different. I'm going to turn this around so you can actually see it. I think it's better if I do it this way. So careful when you lift this up. So just come up here. And the reason you don't want to go crazy on this is, notice those wires on the bottom there. We have these 2 connectors here. So we have these safety locks. See if I can go get them. It's kind of a balancing act over here. I'm going to go the other way because they're facing the other way, so it'll be easier for me to see them this way. So I'll flip it over to show you guys what I did when I took them apart. So now I can actually see them. See, these are child-proof, and that's why I can't open them up. They're actually not that difficult. I don't know why I'm having such options, but I disconnected them now. So let me flip this around here. Okay, now you have 3 components right here. You know, of course, you've got your glass right here, but that's connected with this membrane. Just be real careful. That connection for this is right here. And I have instructions in the training material you put together on how to actually disconnect this to take this ribbon connector off. This is really fragile, so just be real careful. It isn't really that difficult. Once you unlatch it, this will just slide in there. Now, the other thing here is you want to disconnect your panel is you have these little metal tabs. You can bend these up and this portion will come out. And then we have our display PCB board, and we also have our Wi-Fi module. So those components are located up here, and they're all replaceable at any time. So let me go ahead and we'll move this glass out of the way. Talk about some of the other things here. Okay, so these are your work coils. There's 5 of them. Okay, this is that dual burner one. These little felt pads, they just come right off of there. Guys, this is basically just an antenna. It's not designed to be a resistance heater. In fact, when these things short out, what happens is they kind of act like a resistance coil. Customer is going to say, I smell something burning, and the surface area gets real hot because these have become basically a resistance coil. All right, you should get some resistance when you check it, but basically it was designed to be an antenna. You know, we're trying to create that magnetic flux to excite the molecules in our iron or ferrous pans, and we're actually using the pan, the molecules vibrate, and that's what generates the heat. Okay. So all these felt pads are removable. You can take them off. And if you want to replace the work coils, you know, just a couple screws here, you're going to have to flip it over the other way to disconnect the wire connections going into the inverter board. Now, right up on top here, I got a couple safeties. Inside here, it's hard to see, but there's a thermal fuse right there. I can probably pull this up and you can see it. All right, it's a one-shot fuse. Safety, in case there's a runaway condition. And the other one's a thermistor. And that thermistor is not only used for temperature, but it's also used for the hot surface indicator. That's what sends that information to the microprocessor to know that this area is hot. Okay. Now, let's probably we'd be better off on that end. Let's slide this maybe. Is that okay if I slide that, or are you good right there? I'm going to grab a screwdriver. I removed most of these screws just to save time. Is PowerPoint working or not? Okay. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll go through the PowerPoint when we're ready, and we can get some close-up of some of the pictures when we get into troubleshooting. But what I want to show you is something underneath here first. So what I'm going to do is, normally I got about 4 screws I'm removing. I just removed them with the exception of that one. And right over here is those little red LEDs you were seeing before. If you want to, you know, remove those, there's a wire connection and 2 screws. You can slip it underneath, give you a little more room. But let's show you what's underneath here. So this is on your left side, or depending on which way you're mounting it. This is where the power comes in at. So notice we don't use a neutral on here. Everything is line voltage, 208, 220, whatever you're using there. It does require a ground, so you have to make sure the ground is okay. Now what we've got over here is, let's start at this board right here. This is our power supply. We're going to take line voltage and we're going to rectify it and turn it into low voltage DC power. So basically what we're doing at this connection here is, one of these is 5 volts DC and the other one is 12. So if you got a dead dead induction, you're going to check for line voltage coming in here, and you're also going to check for voltage coming out of here. So you got a black and a white and a black and a white. One black and white is your 5 volts DC. The other black and white is your lower, or your power for your relays and for your fans, and for your display, that's 12 volts DC. Now, these are what we call filter boards. There are 3 of them. There's one for the left, there's one for the center, and there's one for the right. One of the things when you've got a situation where it isn't cooking, one of the 3 things you're really checking. First one is the fan running. Second one is the fuse on the filter board good. And third, we'll get into a little bit later, is we have these things called IGBTs. Okay, they're insulated gate bipolar not thermistors, but transistors, and they're the switching, and I'll show you where they are later. That's where the PowerPoint will come in handy. Okay, now when I want to fire up a work zone, whether it be the left or the center or the right one, what I'll do is I'll send a 12-volt signal to this, and that'll actually close that relay to complete the other side of that line. So, you know, if you're not getting any power out of this side, I actually tried this. I had a 9-volt battery and I put it in these connections. I was actually able to operate this relay. I had it unplugged, but I was able to check for continuity, and I am going to get a little bit of resistance through here, but I was able to check that relay. So that's available for you too. Or if you're careful, you can do the same thing. You can maybe position your cooktop in a position that you can go ahead and, you know, you're not going to have anything on here, so it's going to shut down right away, but you can at least check to see if you've got that low voltage signal here and whether or not you're getting line voltage. And of course, like I said, check your fuse. Okay. All right. Now down over here, you can see one of 3 cooling fans. We've got 3 of them. This one's got its own cooling fan, and that one has its own cooling fan. Let me pull this one out and I'll give you a little better view of what's inside here. So we'll go ahead and pop this screw out here. And I'm kind of limited because I have some wire connections for the thymistors, and I also have it for the burners. I think I can get you guys a little more room if I go ahead and disconnect this LED light. I'll be able to swing this out a little more. Let's drop the screw. Yeah, you know, originally, if you worked on an LG induction range before, what we had is we had the workstations. You know, you have your work coils, and they were divided. You know, if we had 4 burners, there was a workstation on this side and a workstation on that side, and there were 3 components to that. There was a filter board, there was an inverter board, and then of course your work coil. Now, the idea behind some of the earlier ones that came out is we in the field had no way of calibrating these burners. So they were calibrated at the factory. So the stipulation on those earlier versions was if you had a shorted filter board or if you had a shorted inverter board, you were going to replace them as a set. The only thing that was different is if the work coil was shorted, then you have to replace all 3 of them. So you got the work coil, and these came as a whole assembly. You got the fan, you got the filter board, and you got the inverter board all at once. Now that gave you the ability to actually switch the 2 zones on those earlier versions. So if this side wasn't heating, like there was a connection coming from my main board, I can unplug those 2 connections and switch it. You have to remember your controls are opposite, but it would give you a good idea whether or not the problem was coming in the main board or in your work zone for that particular area. But what we have here now is, this is now, move this a little bit and lay this down. This is now just a filter board. All right. So if you got a bad filter board because the fuse is blown, figure out why the fuse blown, just replace the filter board, and whatever component failed. Could be a short at work coil, or could maybe have a problem with a short on one of those IGBTs. So you need to repair a couple things. But what's good about this one now is if I have an inverter board problem, I can just replace the inverter board. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right, so right over here, what I got is an air guide. So this fan starts to turn as soon as you select one of those burners. So this fan starts to turn. You can remove these out of a couple screws here, and you'll see what it's doing is it's actually cooling these IGBTs. This one's a little tight, but I still think I can get it in there. Slide this off. So you can see this was just a plastic air guide to get in through there. And these right over here, let me get this screw out of the way so I don't lose it. These right over here are your IGBTs. There's 4 of them. It's kind of a solid state switching device, very heavy duty. And this one is the BD IGBT. It's a little bit bigger. And what we've got over here is some sensors. We have chip sensors, and we also have what we call wire sensors. So here's a couple examples of some of the wire sensors. You can go ahead and check resistance on here. Basically, you get error codes from these things, and basically what it's telling is these sensors are shorted or open. We can go do a continuity check on there, and we can check to see. Of course, you're not going to be able to replace these require replacing the whole boards. Now, the other things are these IGBTs and the DB IGBTs. Tongue twister. The way you're going to check these is, and if we can get the PowerPoint going after I show you these, we can actually go into my little more fine tuning on how to check this. You got to have a meter that has a diode check, or mine is right here with ohms. So I can go ahead and switch that over. Okay. There we go. All right. So as you're looking on these things, there's 3 terminals here. You want to use the 2 to the right as you're facing it. So if I've got a set on this side and I got a set on this side. So if I'm doing these to, what I'm going to do is using these two terminals, this one and this one. Now, if you're doing these right here, it's just the opposite. So they're going to be actually, if you have three terminals, it would be this one and this one. Okay, so it's how you're facing it, the two terminals you want to go to. So set a diode check. What you want to do is put your leads across those two. And if you get a beep, then you got a problem with that. You'll have to replace that board. Now, a couple things that you want to check too is sometimes these are soldered in from the back. There's a lot of current and voltage that goes through there. So sometimes what happens if you got a cold solder joint or something like that, or a poor solder connection, you can actually burn that connection up. And the only way you're going to find that is you actually going to have to unscrew this board and flip it over. Look for burnt marks in the back where these things are actually soldered into the board. Now you're going to do the same thing with the BD, IGBT. You're going to use the two terminals on there. So you're going to be checking those for a no heat situation. Now, the other thing is you have a couple of these chip sensors. Okay, they're really tight. And to grab my glasses so I can point exactly where they're at. They're tight in there. You can see they're like right here. You got one there, you got one there, you got one there. It's kind of hard to get your meter in there. So what you might have to do in those situations is flip those upside down and check for opened or shorted. And then we also have some resistors on this board, and they're in our service literature. These are marked which ones to actually check. So we have some resistors that you want to check. So like I said, with the way this is set up with the display panel, it's really hard to kind of come in here and do voltage checks, but you can see here I can do it a lot safer. I can do a lot of live checks just in matter of a couple minutes checking these components. So let's see if we can get the PowerPoint up, and then what I'll do is I'll run over and we'll talk about some of these connections here. Okay, give us a second to switch over. You can just advance it with that. Is it good there? Okay. Oh, right there. Okay. All right. So first question is, do we have error codes? So we have these three error codes. We got an FC, F5, and an F1. So the first one is, they call it an ARM short, and that's a problem with the IGBT. So a couple checkpoints is check your fan operation, check the fuse at the filter board, and then check for shorts at the IGBTs. That's what we were showing you a little bit earlier. F5 is the BD or IGBT sensor or open shorted. So basically you're going to go check those, either those chip or those wire thermistors. And the last one is top sensors. And those are ones I showed you before that were right at the very top of the work coils. Okay. And these are additional error codes for heating. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, we talked about this one, your terminal block and your filter and power supplies. So you can see these are all marked in. So, you know, what comes in must come out. But remember, you got that relay there that has to be activated by that 12 volts DC in order to complete that circuit. Oh, that's nice. Okay, now I disconnected the work coil so you can actually see the inverter boards. There's your left inverter board, and you can see the center and the right share one inverter board. And right down at the bottom over here is your main board, and that's this right here. Okay, now there's your different fans with the air guides for there's actually three of them. There's one here, and you have another one that's not in the picture right there. Okay, so here's your main PC board. I broke all these connections down in the service literature, so if you can get to it to do live voltage check, I can tell you what each one does in the service literature. And then we'll go to the next one. This is your LCD module, your Wi-Fi PC board, and your touch film. And this is the connector right here that I was saying you got to be really, really careful with. You don't want to damage this thing. This thing's pretty fragile. So there's instructions in the service literature on how to disengage this to remove this film for that connection here. And this is your Wi-Fi PC board. Okay. All right, this is your power supply. Okay, So I got incoming, excuse me, this is your filter board. So I've got incoming line voltage, and then outcoming is on the opposite side here. This is going to the inverter PC boards, and this is that low voltage signal, that 12 volts DC for this relay here to complete that circuit through the filter board. And we talked about this is your power supply. You can check the power supply either at the power supply board, or you can go to this connection here, CN2. It's got 4 pins on there, so we can check for that 5 and 12 volts DC in case we're not getting a display or there's a problem with heating that could be related to that power supply. All right, here's the inverter boards, and let's go a little more in detail here. This is what I was referring to as, you know, burnt connections. So flip the board over, you might see there's, you know, this is kind of exaggerated a little bit. I kind of duplicated this through Photoshop, but you'll really notice this thing. This thing is all burnt up and charred and everything, and you got a bad circuit right there. And then these are where you're going to be checking those IGBTs. Okay, so as you're facing this, these are the 2 connectors to the right. Set it for diode checker. And if your meter beeps at that point, then replace that board. Okay. All right, and here's once again, there's a little close-up of the B IGBT and the IGBTs. And this is going to show you where the thymistors are. So we pointed to them on that camera. You can see I've got 3 of them right here. Probably it's easier to check these from the back if you're checking for an open or short. These little wire ones are a little bit easier. You can just disconnect them to check it. And then the other thing, like I said, and I've got these all laid out for you, where you see these little red boxes, these are the actual resistances that you're going to be checking on the inverter boards. We've got some for the right inverter, for the center, and for the left inverter. And we actually go ahead and label these things. You can read them on the board, and you can check to see if they're opened or shorted. And then this gives you a little view of those sensors. Okay, so we can actually check these right at the connection there, or we can check them right at the main board. We got that all laid out. But I actually just snap this off, and you can see where the thermistor is and where the thermal fuse is located. This is a whole assembly that you can go ahead and replace. And then these are your work coils. Okay, so I think that should do it on that. Any questions? I want to move on and get to the dishwasher if we don't have any questions. So
I need you to drop that so I can see if there's any questions.
Okay.
That took over my whole screen. No questions.
All right. Gentlemen, it's pretty easy to service. I don't anticipate a lot of problems with it. If you have any questions or anything, you can contact our TCC, or you can shoot an email to Training Center, and we'll be able to answer any questions you might run across later. All right, so give us a minute. I'm going to switch over to the dishwasher. I want to spend a little more time on the dishwasher because it's a little bit different from our last model that came out. We have some special features on here that I want to talk about. And I want to get into installation on this too, because it's a little more tricky than our previous model. So just give us about 30 seconds or so. We'll switch the cameras over, get the lighting changed a little bit, and we'll run with it. See my fat belly getting in the screen here. So, all right, let's first talk about what comes with it. When you get this, you'll get a little funnel here, and you get all this stuff here. And we're going to go through this stuff. But a couple features that are on this dishwasher. This is a high-end dishwasher, and it's pretty close to the last generation. We called it the XD dishwasher that had the spray arm that was an X shape, and they introduced steam into the door here, and they changed the steam, the way it's produced, by eliminating the steam generator and going into, I guess you can call it LG steam. We actually use the sump heater to create steam inside here. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is how it came out of the box. Now we have a little kick toe plate here. You can go ahead and screw that on. But remember, these are custom installations. So usually a cabinet maker might have a baseboard that they extend across the whole kitchen. One thing they'll have to do though is if they extend it across the dishwasher here, they're going to have to allow for notches in here so that your door can clear. Now there is no panel that's available for this stuff. Let me go ahead and we'll cancel this. Drive me crazy. This is custom paneling. So you'll have to have a cabinet maker. And it's usually designed so that you get that integrated look across your kitchen. So let's start out what you're going to have to do to install this first. Just like you do any dishwasher, we require water, drain, and electricity. But let's show you what's different about this. There's no more junction box over here like on previous models. There's no more incoming water valve up in the front here. What we have done is we've integrated everything in through the back. Remember, this thing has to line up with everything in that kitchen. So this might have to go all the way back to the wall here. So we really don't want nothing back here. So we left you this indentation. This comes with its own power cord. The power cord cannot be plugged in the back. You'll have to, through the other cabinet, there's a template where to drill the holes. And what you want to do is the electric cord, your water line, and your drain line need to go through there. So this area is that service area where we can run these lines. I just did this so we can hook this up, but this is not the way you want to do it in the customer's house. You want to get one of those little brass 45-degree elbows. You can screw that in there with a male 3/8 fitting that you can use one of those flex lines so you can run it to your water line. And then this is your drain line. So they're all going to exit the cabinet. So try to get it as close as you can to your drain and have your electricity there and also have your water source available to that. Okay. All right, so the first thing that you really want to do is prepare your cabinet opening. So you've got your water lines and your electrical lines and everything run through there. This is kind of sitting out in the open. One of the things that you want to do is, we do have a feature on here, it's automatic door opening. So the customer could either opt out of it or use it. And what it does at the end of the cycle is it's going to pop this door open. So we get rid of some of that condensation to help the dishes dry a little bit. And one of the things that we've eliminated on this one is for years, we use what we call that hybrid drying system that was behind this panel. This is no longer there. So what we're going to do is we're going to rely on evaporation. So we're going to get that water in that last rinse cycle very, very hot, and we're going to allow that to evaporate some of that moisture off the dishes. And then you can either go to night dry or you can have automatic door opening, and this will pop that open to get rid of that steam. So like I said, you can opt out of that. So one of the things you want to do is, since we're going to be creating a lot of moisture from that, and you got your cabinets here, we want to protect those. So let's pull this out and I'll show you what I was referring to. We're going to give you a set of these foil strips here. So prepare that surface under your cabinet, just clean it up. It's got some sticky material. So this is going to go on the inside of the cabinet, kind of acts as a moisture barrier. And we've got some for the sides too. So make sure that you put them in there. If you've got a wood cabinet or something that could be deteriorated by moisture inside there. All right. Now, what you want to do then is, remember, these are custom install. So basically, they're going to have a wood panel that's going to look like the rest of the kitchen. And so what you want to do is you want to try to line this up, because let's say that your panel is here on the dishwasher and you want to line it up with the next thing on the next cabinet, which might be a drawer. You've got to try to get this as close as possible to that, because your wood panel is going to be sitting up to the top of here. So you can do that with your leveling legs. You got two in the front and you got a lot of room to work with, and you've got one in the center. Now, maybe you got these cranked up all the way and you still got a little bit of gap on here. So we're going to give you this template here, and this template is going to help the installer of that wood panel get everything lined up. So if there was a situation where this cabinet right over here is here, and I've got this as far as I can, but I still want everything to line up, what you'll do is you'll measure the distance between here and here, and this is compensation marks on there. You can go ahead and you can compensate for that so that when you do install this panel, everything lines up for you. Now this panel is going to be floating, okay? You can order this part if it's damaged. There's a part number for that, but you're not going to find an outer panel anywhere. These are all going to be custom. So what you're going to have to do is, we're actually going to get a piece of plywood later and make our own panel here because there's a couple things I want to check. But I just kind of cheated here just to give you an idea. I took a little foam board. Now this isn't long enough, but at least it's wide enough to kind of show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so the dimensions on this thing is going to be anywhere from a minimum of 28 3/4 to a maximum of 30 11/16. Now remember, when this door panel swings down, you still got to clear this area here. So that's why you can't make that too long. So usually they're going to try to line this up. So this lines up on the top and your lower panel will line up on the bottom. So you get a nice integrated kitchen, you know, whether or not you put column refrigerators or anything else on there. So you're going to be using this template here. So one of the things is, let's say this is your wood panel that you're putting on there. You have to find the center mark first. So with the tape measure, find the center line and then, you know, mark it in 2 spots. What you're going to do is with a pencil, draw a line straight down. So that's the center of the panel. Now on here, what you're going to do is you can adjust. If your top panel lines up perfectly with the other ones, you can actually use the top line on there. Or if there's a little bit of difference, you can go ahead and mark that, and then you can cut that so that I have a template that I can actually tape onto my door panel here. Now, a couple things you're going to have to do is these cutouts here. You got to cut this one out, and you got another one on the bottom. That's so that I can line this up with my center mark that I drew in pencils on the back of that door. Then you're going to tape this, because what you're going to do is these are what's going to secure the wood panel to this panel right here. And so these are these little plastic sliders. We've got 6 of them here. There's 4 for these openings here and 2 on the very bottom. So what you want to do is drill your little pilot holes for each one of those. And then we got a couple for the bottom. We got a different bracket we're using on the bottom. So the idea behind this is, and let me move this out of the way. So after you've got everything all drilled and everything, now you're going to secure these. So what you're going to do is this goes on the actual wood. So this is a kind of a offset so your screws don't bind up on anything. So with the screws we give you in this package here, you're going to use those to mount those. And then we have 2 more. This is not long enough, but we also have these that attach to these things right here. Now, the idea behind this is once these are attached to the panel, you light everything up and these will drop down. So you're going to have 4 of these securing that panel. Now, the idea behind this is watch this bottom arm. As I'm opening this door, those are going to move. So this panel is going to move. This is going to slide on here. These will go up and down. So that's why it's important that you get your measurements so that when you're in this position, everything lines up for you. As you open the door, this is going to slide up on you. So it allows it to clear on the bottom. Okay. All right. Now, then how you secure it to the very bottom piece is we have this other bracket. So this is secured onto the wood and there's another screw that screws into here. Now, the weight on this thing is the minimum about 5.5. The maximum is about 24.2. I might be a little bit off, but those weights are actually in your literature. And that's the maximum weight and the minimum weight. Now, if you're anything above 17.2 to the 24 range, that panel that you're using is pretty heavy. And what you'll have to do is compensate for that. One thing I did forget, I want to mention this before I show you how to make that adjustment, is these are a couple little felt pads. And remember that wood panel is moving here. You don't want to hear that kind of grinding sound. So it actually shows you in the literature on where to actually, these are sticky things. You just stick them on here and now your wood panel will slide on there and this will keep it from scraping, getting that scraping noise. So let's get this out of the way. These are your securing brackets. Once you get it in there, you can mount it on the top, or if you have a granite counter, you can pop off these plugs and you can plug it in remove that plug and use a screw to attach it to the cabinet. Okay. Now, if your door panel weighs more than 17 pounds and all the way up to that 24 pounds, this thing could, with the weight of it, it can be pulling this door down pretty heavily, and the customer has to grab a hold of it. And by the way, the handle also is going to match your cabinet, so your cabinet maker has to match a handle, and they'll go ahead and screw it onto that wood panel for them. So there's an adjustment for these tensions on these cables. So in this package of screws here, let me pop this open and I can show you what I'm talking about. You got these 2 long screws. What you're going to do is, maybe it's hard to see, but there's a little hole here and a little kind of a notch. You're going to put these screws in here. You're going to create your own threads when you screw these in. I'm just going to put them in there just so you can see where they go. So there'll be one on this side and there'll be one on this side. And so with your custom panel installed on there, what you're going to do is don't go to the fully open position. You don't want to do that. You want to go at about 30 degrees. So there's 90 here. This is about 45. So you're at about 30-degree angle. And what you're going to do is you're going to screw these in until you get the right tension on that door. I just put it into diagnostic mode. So, all right. So like you said, you just screw these in. Be careful with these things because you can actually strip those out. You're just going into plastic that's at the base here. And what you're doing is you're putting tension on this cable right here. And so that'll be easier for the consumer to open and close that door. All right. All right, so let's get this out of the way. Now, one of the accessories that you're going to get is right here. This is the little funnel for the salt. This one is has a water softening system on there. So one of the things that the consumer is going to have to do is make a decision whether or not they want to use this for creating soft water. They don't have to do it that way. It is automatically set at the factory to not soften the water. There's a setting, it's in the owner's manual. You just hit a couple buttons and it will display what the softness is set at. Okay, most of the time you're going to see an H0. But if you want to use the softening system, once you get into that mode, you'll hold those 2 buttons. And I could look them up for you. I just forgot where they were. But you can hold those 2 buttons down. Your display will come up and you can use your start pad to go ahead and activate that. Let's see, I think it's on here. That's your drying guide. You'll get an instruction sheet here. So it's in multiple languages here. And so basically what you're going to do is these 2 buttons right here. You're going to take your power and half load button. Where's my half load? And hold those 2 in. And see, I'm set for H4. That's what I set it for. Now, if you want to change that, the instructions are wrong. I found this out. I actually crossed that out. It says use delayed start to change it. So while you're holding in those 2 buttons, use the remote start button to go ahead and change it. So each time you hit that button, it goes into the next setting. So there's actually 5 settings, H1 to H4. I got it set it for the highest setting. Now, in order to use this, you have to know what the water hardness is. So what we did is we gave you a little test kit. Now, you can also check with your local utility company. They know what the grains of hardness is on the water. You can check with them. What you're going to do is rip this package open and don't run it under a stream of water. Just dip it in water, shake it off a little bit, and let that react. And you're going to get a number value here depending on the color. And so if you've got this one over here, 250, basically, if you use this chart here, it's going to tell you where to set it at. So at 250 right here, we're going to be using, and there's some more instructions here on the hardness range. Basically, these are your, the amount of the water hardness. So you can slide that over and you can set it for H1, H2, H3, or H4, depending on what you want to use it for, okay? So it's real simple. Customers set it up for the first time. And like I said, they don't have to use that if they don't want to. That's kind of like a little option. Now that tank is on the bottom there. So if you pull this out, if you're going to use it for soft water, you remove this cap here And there's special salt for dishwashers. I checked around here. If anybody knows where to buy it, I can't find it in Huntsville right now, but I did find it on Amazon. There was 3 manufacturers I found. Finish made one, and there was 2 other companies. And for a box of this stuff, I think it's around maybe 2 pounds or 3 pounds. It was about $12 to $13. So there's a ratio, I think it's 2.2 pounds of salt for each liter of water. And so what you do is use that funnel and you can pour the water and the salt in here. Now on your display, you'll actually get a refill to let you know when to go ahead and fill that. All right, before we move on to more of the operation, let's talk about some of the different little features on here that we have. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll move these over. Any questions on installation before I move on? No. All right, let's show you a couple of the settings on here.
Is that salt kit available?
What's that?
Is that salt kit available separately? That tester kit? What,
the testing kit that I showed you actually came in the installation package. It was included. Okay.
No, can I get it separately?
Yeah, the customer will get one of those.
Can it be ordered? Is there a part number for it?
I don't know. I can check for you. Okay.
Thank you.
You're talking about for the hardness, measuring the water hardness.
Yes.
You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's.
Oh, they have it? Okay, fine. Thanks.
Let me check on this envelope to see if there's a part number. No, there isn't a part number, but I'll look in the exploded view, see if there's actually a number there in case it's missing or they throw it away. Okay. All right. So power button, long press to power it up. Now this is a 2-step process. Okay. So kind of go from this way all the way over. So you're going to go ahead and check your cycles, whatever cycle you want to use. You notice that these say steam cycle. So these automatically default. We've got your heavy, your delicates, and your refresh. These will automatically choose steam cycles for them. That's a default on there. But you can also choose steam for some of the other cycles that isn't a default for. Now, basically your heavy is for your really dirty dishes. We have a 3-phase DC motor. We can change the intensity of the spray. You know, we could give you a lighter spray in delicates, or we can give you a heavier spray in heavy duty. Now, refresh is basically, you're not going to use detergent. It's basically, you've got dishes that were sitting in a cabinet for years or whatever. You know, Thanksgiving's coming, your family's coming down, and you want to use those. This is designed just to refresh them. So what it's going to do is going to rinse them off, and then it's going to use steam. We use that purified water during the steam cycle, and the dishes, when it's done, they're going to kind of feel warm from that steam cycle. This is probably going to be your most common one. That's your normal. And then we have turbo. Turbo will wash the dishes in about an hour's time. I found my cycle a little bit longer, but what they're going to do in turbo is they don't automatically select what we call extra dry. It doesn't dry in turbo. So if you want your dishes dry, select extra dry. And what that feature does is it heats up that rinse water, gets it a little bit hotter, and they extend that drying time a little bit, because we're relying on that evaporation from the thermal energy that's stored in those dishes. Remember that glass stuff is going to dry really good, but plastic stuff might have some moisture on it, especially those little things that collect water. You just have to remind the customers that that's normal in some of these situations. What you can do is remember, rinse aid is not an option anymore. Rinse aid is mandatory, so make sure that they use rinse aid. All right, so we have a download cycle. All right, and then we have some indicators on here. This one is telling me that I got to add rinse aid. Now, if the rinse aid indicator is flashing, there's obviously no rinse aid left in here. It is going to default to extra dry. So they realize without the rinse aid, we need the extra dry feature to get those dishes dry. It will automatically default to it. That's why that's illuminated right now. Otherwise, if it wasn't a default, you would have to select it. This indicates that you machine clean. It's time to clean your dishwasher. It goes by how many cycles you use. Machine cycle is right here. It's a little shorter cycle. It's designed to clean that. You can get commercial cleaners that are available. They're not commercial, but they're residential cleaners for dishwasher. Finish makes it, Dishwasher Magic. Vinegar works good, citric acid crystals. This is your Wi-Fi indicator, and this one is your salt refill. Now, dual zone is you're going to put your dirty dishes on the bottom, so you're going to get a more intense spray down here, and your lighter soiled ones or your delicate ones you can put on the top. This is less intense up here. So we have two different spray zones we're working with. You can do half load. So you only got a small amount of dishes. You can choose between the upper or the lower. And as you get into that, you see these little indicators here. This will indicate that it's going to do a half load on the top. This one indicates you're going to do it on the bottom. Okay, there's your steam. High temperature, what it does is just heats up the water, gets it a little bit hotter. Explain what that is. We do have delayed start. Now you're going to have to download the SKS app in order to get all the features for the Wi-Fi. So it has step-by-step instructions on how to do that. And once that's installed, you can delayed start this. Okay. And that's not delayed start, but actually remote start. And that's also what you would use to go ahead and turn that on to find out your home network. This is your control lock. If you want to lock this out, you just hold that button in. That'll lock out the control panel, and you get a seal on the display. This is your start, and this is also used for your cancel. All right, any questions on the features on there? Okay. All right, you're probably interested in about how this works. Okay, let me turn this around, and I'll show you what we've got over here. So I got this hooked up because I actually want to run this for you guys. This part over here is called your water jacket. All right. This is where your either the normal water, if it isn't softened, or softened water, if you choose to use the water soften feature, goes into. So what we've got over here is, this was typically called our air guide. And this is on the previous models through this port over here. This is where the water entered the dishwasher. This is a little changed on this one now. So what I've got over here is my flow meter. So all the water from the inlet valve are coming in through here. They're going to go past the flow meter. It's going to channel it back to go into the resin tank, brine tank. So I've got one here to show you what it looks like. Okay, so right over here is your resin tank. This is that resin that softens the water. And this is your brine tank, and that's used for regeneration. We've got to remove the minerals that we removed during the softening process. So that's what the salt is used for. So we got 3 ports that go into your water jacket. So this one is that incoming water coming in. And this one is what we call our softening valve. So this is a DC valve. We leave it de-energized during a normal cycle. So what it does is, when the water is entering this resin tank, it pushes that water through the bottom, comes out through the top, and then comes in through here. And that's where that water now enters this water jacket. Now, depending on what cycles and what options, you'll see the water level change. I'm going to use the turbo wash, and that'll actually bring that water line up here. See, this softened water was left from the last cycle. That's why this is so high up here. Now, when I use the normal cycle, that water level only went up through here. Now, what this is now used for, this is kind of an air, if you get too much pressure, you know, you're heating up that water, this is kind of an air gap that'll allow that excessive pressure to escape. But it's also used as an overflow protector. If this water level gets high enough, and I think it's about right into here, this will channel this water down into here. And that's a good thing to have, because what if the softener valve fails? That softener valve has to open, and that diverts the water back into the sump. So we're not actually taking this water and putting it into the dishwasher through this opening. We're actually coming in through this opening down at the bottom. And I can see why they're doing that. When I go into regeneration, I don't want to run all that soap and that salty water into the stainless steel tub. So I can still run the brine through the resin tank, and then I can push it back through the air jacket and just go right into the sump where it can turn on the drain pump. So it makes sense to me why they did it that way. Now you got 3 valves on here. Your main valve in the back is 120 volts. These two, this one's called your softener valve, and this one over here is called your air water jacket valve. These are all DC. They run about 12 to 16 volts DC. Okay, you can test these into the test mode. Now, there's only a few components on here that work on 120. We're switching over to a lot of things with DC voltage. So your water jack, your main valve is AC, your vary motor is AC, and so is your heater on your sump. So those are all going to be AC. Now, this is where it's coming from your drain pump. This is where your air gap is right now. We used to have it up here. This is it right now. So this is your drain hose leaving that. So the minimum height on that drain hose needs to be about 12 inches. Okay, so you need about 12 inches. You don't want to have it too low because you can cause siphoning problems. So you want to have a little bit of a siphon break on that drain hose too. All right. Now let's flip this around. Here's where your main board is, okay? So if you want to do any voltage checks on the main board, got a little interference with this shipping strap. Let me see if I can move it. But it's got these two little tabs. So you just disengage them. They kind of snap, and then you just lift that right out of there. So. There we go. So you can remove this cover, and you got a lot of room to work on your board right there. All right. Now, one of the things as far as service is concerned, your noise filter is now located right there. I can actually pop this board out after I pull out the dishwasher, and there's a little locking tab there. I can disengage that, and I can get to that noise filter. There's a fuse on there. I can also, you can get to your thermistor right here. I think, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to see if I can work out this wash pump and motor assembly right through here, because otherwise, when you're doing things like, got a problem with this here, you're going to have to separate these two. So it might require two people to do that. What's secured onto here is you're going to have to disconnect ground wires, hoses, wire connections and stuff. But you have two things that lock this to the base. If you actually remove this cover and disengage this linkage, and this is real easy to do, you just do this, push this forward, and then you can now, it'll catch on there. And then what you can do is you can now disengage that from that, and that'll actually hold that in place. So, all right, so that'll hold that right there. And then when you line it up, you can do the same thing. Okay, so after you remove this cover, this linkage will come off, and you can see where what they did is in this metal piece here, they cut out a little square, and they have a plastic kind of a notch that when you drop that, this whole arm down here, that little plastic tab locks this in place. So you got one on this side and you got one on the other side. And in the back on this base, you've got two screws. I make it sound simple, but there's a lot of things you have to actually do to separate this, and it just worked a lot easier with two people. Now, one of the things I want to try is when I get the wood panel here, I want to actually see if I can get this door off through this little device here where I can lock this up and disengage it from the cable assembly. I'm going to see if I can, since I've just got a hinge pin sitting here, I'm going to see if I can lift this off like on the previous model. I want to see if this is going to interfere or not with that. Okay. Now, if you want to get to any of the boards up here, you don't have to actually remove the panel. There's screws here. You can separate these two. We got a couple things up here. We've got your Wi-Fi modules up here, display board, and your connections for your user interface, like your efficiency options and your performance options and cycles, all plug into that little board here, and the wiring runs down through there. The other thing you got over here is your soap dispenser. Now that is actually snapped into this liner here. If you have to replace that when you order that, you're actually going to get this kit here. So if I pull this out, so this would be on the inside of your door. Let's see if I can get this right. Yeah, it'll fit like this. So this is going to snap into the door. We have these little tabs right here. That's going to lock it into that stainless steel panel. So in order to get that out of there, we gave you a set of wedges. So there's a set of wedges for the bottom, and you got some wedges for the side. So you pry these in there and then snap that cover on, and then you can actually disengage this and then snap the new one back in. So the position on here, this is for your rinse aid. All that is just a reed switch. It's got a little float that floats up and down, 5-volt DC signal. And this is for your rinse aid and your detergent cup. It has 2 positions. So it's armed when you close it. First time we energize this, we pop open the soap dispenser. The second time it dispenses your rinse aid, and then it gets rearmed when you close everything again. Now everybody's using monodope tablets, so we actually have a spot for it. I do recommend, I found the best place for them is actually throw them in the silverware basket, but I'll leave it up to you. But don't tell the customer to throw those on the bottom. There's usually water down there. They have a coating on there that's used like in vitamins, and sometimes that gets stuck to the bottom. So you're better off either putting it in here, or you can go ahead and you can put it in your silverware basket too. So makes it a little bit easier to work with that. All right. And then we also give you instructions for that basket. See how we're doing on time. All right, let me show you how to get into the test mode, because we'll be able to do a lot of things in the test mode. If I remember correctly, I might have to look this up, but I think it was power, heavy, and start. Let's see if it's either that or auto, but I'll find out as soon as I hit these 2. So you're in the standby mode. So I'm going to put my hand on power and heavy, and then I'm going to hit the start button. And let's try auto. Maybe it was auto. Yeah, it was auto. So I had them wrong. So power, auto, and start. And what you're seeing right here is we're giving your software revisions. The one of them is the D is for the display. The U is for the main board. And then I have an indication here that I'm not hooked up to the Wi-Fi. So I'm getting an error code. Not really an error code. It's just saying you're not connected to that. All right, to advance it, you're going to hit the start pause button. I don't have a memorized, so let me grab the sheet. But there's only one of these that you can do with the door open, and that's basically your drain pump. If you have that setting, that's the only one that you can leave the door open. Otherwise, you're going to have the door closed. So let me get that sheet, and I'll show you what we can do in the actual cycle here. All right, so you're going to advance it with the start. So the first one is going to be your dispenser. So if you have your dispenser closed, if you hit that button, you can actually hear that little thump, and you can hear the soap dispenser work. The next time is going to be, and also it's showing you the sump thermistor temperature. Maybe we get that camera up there. You can see that's in Celsius. Next one is going to be the soil sensor. Okay, so I can hit that. Okay, and if you got a problem with the soil sensor, that'll bring that up. And it's also going to flash if rinse aid is needed in that cycle. The next one, I'm going to turn on my inlet valve. But what it's going to also show you is the frequency. Remember, this is a flow meter there. You can actually see the numbers counting as the water is coming in. So I missed one. That's your drain pump. But you can actually see the RPMs of the drain pump on there. Remember, that's a 3-phase motor, and we're going to use those for 2 reasons. During the drain cycle, we used to use a float on some of the earlier models. So the float would send a 5-volt DC signal, whether or not the tub is empty. When we came up with a new design on the motor, we went with a different way. We got rid of the float. So now we determine that the water is drained by 2 things. We're going to turn on our drain pump, but we're also, during that drain cycle, we're going to turn on the wash pump. Now, these are 3-phase DC motors, so they will send a feedback signal to the board, and they can check RPMs. So the idea behind this, when you got a full tub of water and you got your drain pump activated, there's going to be some resistance to that peller because of the water in there. So I'm sending a certain amount of voltage down to that, and I'm expecting a signal back so I can watch that. So the idea behind running both of those motors is, as the water level drops, the RPMs on your impellers are going to speed up. The board will pick that up and say you've drained with water. So if I get a situation where I got a kinked hose, or I got a totally blocked hose because I put it in a disposer and didn't knock out the plug, basically we're not going to see those RPMs rise. So we're going to get the drain error on there. So that's what they use for the drain error now. Now, next time I hit this is going to do the inlet valve, and you can see the frequency change now. See the numbers counting? That's one way of verifying that your flow meter is working okay. If I hit this one, this will energize the water jacket. Got to hit the start button. Okay, that's your water jacket. This one is your softening valve. Okay, if I hit it again, this is going to be the wash motor. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's pretty quiet. It's going on right now. And the next one is your wash motor and your vary valve. This is how you pick up if you have a problem with it not changing positions. These will bring up error codes for there. Okay. All right, and then the last one is just power off. Okay, so this is all in the service literature on how to get into the test mode and what you can do in the test mode. Getting close to our cutoff time, so I want to talk a couple things with you. These are your door switches, okay? Now, typically on the older dishwashers, what we did is we would have one side being the heater switch and the other side was the actual door switch. And earlier models, these were both neutral. Then later on, we switched when one was neutral and one was L1. These are just sensing switches, so you're not going to be able to measure any voltage up there. I think what they do is they use they have a transistor on the board and they just look for that voltage, go high to low depending on the position of the switch. The only way you can really check the switch is by continuity. So what you're going to do is disconnect the power to the unit, unplug those connectors, and just look for changes when the doors open and close. So you can do both of those and check to see if the door switch is working okay, if you're getting door closed errors. This is that little motor for your automatic door open. And I actually went through a dry cycle, and when the dry cycle was over, there was a delay of maybe about 20 seconds. They activated this motor. There's a little, like a rack here that slides this pin out, pushes on the door, and it opens it to about this position right here. So it allows that moisture to escape. And then shortly right after that, it retracts that pin so you're ready for the next cycle. Now that works off 16 volts DC, and they come in off of the black and the brown wire at pin 1 and 2. If you want to do an ohm check on that motor, that's about 50 ohms. Voltage is about 16 volts DC. So they use 16 volts to pop the door open, negative 16 volts retracts that. So they just reverse polarity. And the other 3 wires are basically your signal. You have to know whether or not it's sensing door open or close. Pin number 4 is your ground. So I found with this retracted all the way at pin 3, when I reference it to pin 4, I got 5 volts, but I didn't get anything. I got 0 volts from 4 to 5. Now, when this is retracted out, that's going to change. That first one's going to drop to 0, and this one's going to go to 5. So all it is a 5-volt signal on there. Okay. All right. I know we kind of rushed things a little bit, but on this little access panel down over here, you got a little access to get to your drain pump. There's a locking tab here. Put a little cloth on there, some water. You can unplug that connector. You can actually unscrew that. You can get that out of there. This is just attached to your sump. Now, when you want to separate the tubs, you're going to have to actually take everything out of here. You're going to remove your baskets. This one over here is probably the hardest one to remove. See these this little tab right over here. You're going to use a screwdriver to widen this a little bit. This little pin slips down into there. There's one on either side. You just push that straight up. It's got a little notch in the back. Slide it to the back and you can release this basket. The other 2 slide out. You got to remove the manifold tower for the water tower. It's got steel clips. There's one on the top and there's one in the back. You got to find it. It's kind of well hidden. Got to remove that. You got to remove your spray arm. Remove your filter and the screen, and then you'll see where the screws are. There are about 8 screws. Basically on that sump assembly, we now have 2 halves. So you're releasing the top half. The seal for the sump is on the bottom half. So that has to be taken apart before you actually separate these tubs. If you're working on like the, the float, you're not going to be able to access it. Remember, this is a solid base on the bottom, so you won't get to that, or your salt or your regeneration tank. That's going to have the tub separated. Okay. Now we have a flood safety on here. And basically this will give you, we changed that. That used to be an EI error code. It was confusing because it was really similar to a fill error, which was IE. We went with AE now. So basically what happens is if there's too much water in here, like maybe your fill valve is stuck open, you're not around. So as long as you're plugged in, we're monitoring that. And all it is a little float. On the earlier models, it used to be located here, and they used 5 volts DC. The newer one is in the center now, and it uses 16 volts DC. So what we do is there's little holes where this little area here where the door folds down, and there's a watery delivery system. So if that water level rises, it fills in that little trough and diverts that water to the base where it rolls down to where that float is, and the water will push that float up and it'll activate a signal. So you'll get a couple things. You'll get an error code up here, and you're also going to turn on your drain pump. So it's kind of a flood protector. It works 24/7. All you have to do is have that plugged in. Okay. All right. Any questions?
How can I change the motor down at the bottom?
Well, I'm going to try something. I'm going to see if I just got this a few weeks ago and just was I actually took the whole thing apart. Now I'm going to see if I can find an easier way, because you're probably going to have more problems with the motor than anything. So I'm going to see if there's a way I can actually get it through here. All right. The other thing is I'm going to try to see if when I get the wood panel here, if I can actually remove this whole front panel right here. And then what I want to do is I want to disengage these 2 clips right here and see if I can just separate the tub without pulling the whole tub out, because I would have to disconnect my sump assembly. So that motor is held on by rubber hangers. So we got a rubber hanger, we got the hose that comes to it, you got the nozzle for the steam generator, and you got a connection to your thermistor and to your motor. So I'm going to see if I can either work it out in through here or work it out in through there. And what we'll do is we'll do a video on it and we'll update it on GLMS. Okay. So I apologize for not actually trying that, but we were trying to get a lot together this week and didn't really have time to do it. So I'm going to try to find an easier way for you guys, is what I'm trying to say. So.
And we flip this unit easy, or it's not easy flippable? Like the old one that you had that had the little motor. One of the videos was,
yeah, the other one had actually, you could lay it on its back and there was a little panel there, but there's nothing on the bottom now. This bottom is solid because water sits in there. So yeah, so you're not gonna, don't think that you're gonna pull it out and lay it on its back and get to that motor, because there's nothing down there. It's all a solid base. So that's what high-end products have, a lot of features on there, so they put a lot of things in there. So service sometimes on these higher price things aren't really as simple as, some of the cheaper models. So anything else?
Thank you.
I do like the way you changed the water hookups. They should do it for more machines in the back. All the hookups.
Yeah, because we have problems with fill valves. So unfortunately, we were able to do it this way, and we were able to pull this out, and we removed the 2 screws in the back. And what you got to do is you got to disconnect. The hoses on here have these little O-rings in there. So there is a little plastic insert that's holding them in place. We had to kind of disengage it a little bit, and on that water jacket, we actually were able to remove 2 screws, disconnect the connection for the flow meter, and we actually pulled up on that water jacket, and that disconnected the connections to that, and then we were able to open that up and pop in there. So okay, all right, any other questions? We're just about ready to wrap this up. So if not, a couple things. I would just want to remind you guys, we're always looking for suggestions on what to do on video and stuff like that. And so if you guys have any suggestions, it doesn't always have to be on appliances. If you want to do TVs, let us know. Or if there's any classes you want, like MOT or something else that you find would be useful, in place of field training until we can actually hit the road, we'll need to do that. So just want to make sure that we're getting you covered. We had some suggestions in the last class. They want more seal system stuff. So let us know and we'll go ahead and try to do whatever you want. Dan's shaking his head over there. So So don't forget, a
redoing
lot of
the-
that stuff is in GLMS too. So if you don't know about it, just go to glms@lge.com, create a user ID and a password. I'll take a couple days to verify your information, and we'll send you a notification about a temporary password and your user ID. You can go there, create your own password, and we've got everything in there. There's videos and clips and newsletters and anything that you can imagine. So that's available to you guys.
Problem is, when we're out in the field, we can't get in touch with nobody when we need them.
As far as there's a mobile GSFS app.
No, there's areas I am in. You can't even speak Wi-Fi. You can't find a signal if you go 10 or 20 miles.
I understand. Well, you have phone communication, because there's always our tech line. So, I know our tech line's busy, so sometimes you guys got to wait a little bit, but that's available for you. So. Hey, Michael, I haven't seen you in years. How you doing?
What about,
right,
are they doing the watchtower training, or you don't know?
Yeah, what we did is we didn't film that one, so we got a lot of requests for it. So what I think we'll do is we're going to set up a web class. This time we are going to record it like we did this class, and it'll be available online. But we'll probably have to do a live thing just to show you how to do it. I got it sitting right here. It's we did a couple classes, and we got a request to do it again. So we're even going to get Dan to do his refrigerator again too. So he's looking at me funny, right?
Is there a scheduled date for the watchtower or not yet?
I haven't set it up because we've got some courses that we already set up. Like we've got one for we have a new freestanding oven. It's a gas oven with an air fryer in there. We want to go ahead and introduce that to you. We've got a new microwave. We have a draw microwave, and we also want to get into microwave diagnosing. And then we also have some new ovens that we have coming out. So those already been put on the calendar. So when we come up with a date, we'll go ahead and set that up for you guys and let you guys know. So our intention is to get it out there so you guys know ahead of time. So.
Thanks.
All right. All right, I'm gonna let you guys go. I know you guys got busy schedules. I really want to appreciate the time you guys gave me this morning or afternoon, depending on your time zone. Really appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys. I miss seeing you guys in the field. It's been a long time since I've been out. I haven't been out since March, so I'm looking forward. But with the way things going, it might not be till 22. So hopefully we'll get out there soon. But in the meantime, we're going to try different things to help you guys stay connected with your appliances and your TV needs. And just be safe out there, guys. We really appreciate the effort you guys are doing for our customers. They appreciate it, and we appreciate it. And I can't thank you guys enough, because I know the sacrifice you guys are making. You guys are also our heroes out there. So really be safe out there. And if I don't see you guys, have a great holiday and great rest of the year. So take care, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What type of soap, or with regarding to running the hot water before running the load, what's with that, or nothing changed, or you don't recommend it now?
What was that on about soap?
What is there any specific type of soap you want used on the LG dishwashers in general? And
All right, not to have favorites or anything, but my favorite, and I use it on my dishwasher, and I would recommend it on here. In fact, we give you a sample of it, is Finish. Those Monte-Dose tablets. You just drop one in there, and you're good to go. With these low amount of water, they're perfect because they dissolve and they get concentrated soap that sit on the dishes. And they actually leave a film, and I'm impressed. And probably Cascade is about the same quality. So whatever one you want to use. I don't like the liquid ones because they separate in the bottle. If you want to use it, just make sure you shake the bottle real good. Powder ones, I got a problem with those. If they're sitting under the counter and they get damp or something, they can lose their effectiveness. I kind of like the Monte-Dose. You get like 16 to 30 of them, and you go through them pretty quickly, so you're always refreshing that detergent. So I would recommend those. So, all right. All right, everybody, have a great day and be safe out there, okay? Shoot me an email.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care now.